Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I'm Jon Macri, and I am joined once again by the great Nic Bodiford. Nick, we're 2 weeks now into the season, still, plenty of overreactions, even panic going on to these small sample sizes that we currently have. But we at least have some data to kind of work off of, more so than just week one. So we're going to put that data to work here and figure out who we should be trusting heading into week three. So how are you feeling heading into this week?
I'm good. We're thriving in the chaos. How are you?
Yeah. That's kind of what it is, right? Especially early in the season, there's like so much that changes from one year to the next, and we just kind of have to adjust and kind of reset our expectations of some of these teams and players and stuff like that. So it'll be fun until we get some larger sample sizes, but we'll sort through it. We'll make it work. And yeah, I'm just looking at my list today of kind of players that we're going to talk about. And fair warning, I'm feeling in an optimistic mood this week where I'm going to be highlighting a few players who have been kind of quiet so far, and I think are going to be in for a nice kind of bounce back or get right week. So hopefully the football gods don't crush me on that one, because I'll have to switch up my entire demeanor for next week if that's the case. But it's gonna be an interesting week, man. But yeah, before we get into it, we're just to kind of give an idea of kind of what we've been doing. If you haven't listened to the show before, we're going to go through some of our favorite QB and defense special team streamers, wide receiver cornerback matchups, wide receiver man zone notes, some O-line D-line matchup data, and I've gone through again Nate's start sit article and picked out a couple names from that list as well that I'd like to highlight. And something else that we added this week, Nick, talking about a couple of the hot waiver wire names and kind of what to do with them now that we have them type thing. So that'll be fun to get into as well. But before we get into that, a quick shout out to our friends at DraftKings. TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you call a touchdown. One thing's for sure, touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, from the special teams or defense, we don't care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings Sportsbook is the number one place to bet touchdowns. So if you're ready to place your first NFL bet, try something simple like betting a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance on your own? New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the Sportsbook app and use code PFF. That's code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. All right, Nick, let's kick things off where we always do and focus in on our quarterback streamers of the week. You wrote up a couple for PFF.com, and starting with the highest graded passer / second highest overall graded quarterback per PFF through 2 weeks of the year. What do you like about Derek Carr in week 3 against the Philadelphia Eagles?
I had a love-hate relationship with him last year, but Cliff Kingsbury, if only, Clint Kubiak has fixed everything. New Orleans offense ranks number 1 among NFL teams in success rate, EPA per play, and positive EPA rate. He is using motion and play action nonstop. They rank top 4 in explosive pass plays when utilizing either and or both. This offense, they just look like an unstoppable force. The Eagles, they continue to invest in the defense in the draft, and I think that things could get interesting as the season progresses. Cooper DeJean is he's taken a few more snaps here and there, but they still we'll cover this a little bit more in depth later, but he's still not in the starting lineup. I think Philly's defense could improve, but right now it just doesn't look like one that's going to put up a huge fight against this team. And the way that New Orleans, all their plays, they're not wasting any plays. They're using motion, they're calling play action, and they're funneling looks to their most talented players. And that's what you want to see.
Yeah, it's hard to argue how good they've looked so far this year, right? Like, and it hasn't even been on like a ton of dropbacks for Derek Carr either, right? He ranks only ahead of Jordan Love, who only played one game, and Malik Willis, who's basically only played one game in terms of pass attempts so far this season. They just haven't had to pass so far because they've either blown out Carolina or Dallas, as surprising as that might be to some. But I do think that the Eagles will provide probably more of a challenge this week, which I think could be a good thing for Carr as well, and like create a closer score where maybe they are passing a little bit more. The Saints are 2.5-point favorites right now, so pretty tight margin there for the home team. Over under this game is 49.5, which is the highest of the week. So I love what Carr has done so far. I know he's always kind of a difficult player to trust in starting lineups just based on his history, but there's some momentum here to take advantage of, like you said, and with a turned around offense potentially under Clint Kubiak against a defense that still showing some warts here early in the season. Like he's not going to be QB1 or anything crazy like that in fantasy, but definitely has put himself into a starting consideration. Okay, how about another one of your QB streamers of the week? You've been a man of the brand here, going now with the third highest overall quarterback graded for PFF through 2 weeks, and obviously still feeling confident about Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks this week.
Yeah, so Ryan Grubb similarly using quite a bit of motion, which is helping Geno. Let's see here. I got it in here. Smith's 75.0 PFF passing grade on pass plays with motion ranks 9th among 34 NFL quarterbacks with at least 10 qualifying dropbacks. Miami's pass defense is allowing the league's highest explosive pass play rate at 16.7%. I don't think so. Miami, they're also dealing with, talk about this a little more later, but with Tua out and Teron Armstead hurt, I don't think that they're going to be able to maintain possession and very, very effectively. Yes, Seattle will run the ball, but they've also shown us through 2 weeks that in terms of the passing game, they are going to specifically target the per player matchups that they identify ahead of time. Jalen Ramsey still working through this hamstring thing, and teams have been attacking him deep. Like I said, we'll get more into that in a minute. Kader Kahu, we had a little bit of success against him last week. I think that what's going on with Miami secondary is too big to ignore. Geno Smith going to be effective here.
Yeah, no, I like the call. One of the best matchups for quarterbacks as well, according to our strength of schedule tool. Even though Miami, like, they haven't given up a ton of points to opposing fantasy QBs so far, I'm still at the point where I trust the matchup tool, which takes a lot more into account than the small sample size of data that we got from like the 2 weeks of raw numbers and in fantasy points allowed, stuff like that. So yeah, I like the matchup. I mean, yeah, we're going to get into a few Seattle wide receivers as well, who have some positive matchups going ahead. So my QB streamer this week, I said I was going to be optimistic about some players, and I'll go on the opposite end of the spectrum of players that haven't graded well for PFF so far this year, and that's Jared Goff of America's team, the Detroit Lions, here going up against the Arizona Cardinals. So Goff he's struggled to start the season, right? He's earned just a 43.2 passing grade on the year. That ranks 30th among 33 qualifying quarterbacks. His fantasy production hasn't really been much better. He currently sits as like QB 28 overall. However, again, still very early in the season. It's a very small sample size to kind of react to. And I think the matchup this week is one that should allow for Goff to kind of bounce back and deliver a potential top 12 fantasy performance in week 3. If we look at the matchup first, like in the trenches, the Lions currently own a slightly above average mark in pass blocking grade, but are still considered a top 3 offensive line per our rankings heading into week 3. The Cardinals defensive line has generated a below average pressure rate, and they have tied for the 3rd slowest time to pressure on the season at 2.65 seconds. Again, a nice matchup advantage in the trenches. I think that gives Goff time to get the ball to his top playmakers while letting them kind of do the rest. We've seen obviously what Amon-Ra St. Brown can do, Jameson Williams obviously early in the year as well, and Sam Laporta too. So they're doing this against the 31st ranked team coverage grade in the league so far in Arizona. They have a 47.2 team coverage grade. And the Cardinals are also the best quarterback matchup this week, according to our strength of schedule tool as well. And for what it's worth, have also averaged the fifth most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this season. So I'm in on Goff having the first top 12 finish this season of his season here in week 3.
Yep. I think this is smart. Talked a lot about how bad Arizona's defense is, and they have not disappointed from a fantasy perspective. I also think that the Cardinals are going to be able to push the pace on Detroit in what is shaping up to be a pass funnel defense. Talked about that in the defenses to exploit piece this week. No further notes.
Like it. Nice. All right, let's talk some wide receivers now, Nick. And we'll start with the players highlighted in your wide receiver cornerback matchup article out now on PFF.com. And the first name on your list is for those Arizona Cardinals. Their wide receiver, no, not Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not going to be that easy. But Greg Dortch, what do you like about his matchup this week?
Yeah, light the Dortch. So Detroit, they're kind of running a platoon in their slot coverage unit, and very strangely, they've removed Brian Branch from the primary slot coverage role. They're putting Amik Robertson in there, and he's doing okay, but the unit as a whole has been just giving up yards and fantasy points to opposing slot receivers. Greg Dortch, proven target earner. Very efficient on a per route basis. He ranks 12th in deep target rate, 11th in catch rate, and yards per route run. Ties for 6th in contested catch rate, which is kind of funny because he's a spindly little dude, but he's getting the job done there. As for the team level slot coverage data, I think the thing we want to highlight here is that they tie for the 11th highest explosive pass plays allowed rate at 13.7%. Dortch, we know what he is. He's a very good role player. And I think that this is, like I just said, it's a pass funnel defense that I think that he's going to play his role here. Won't have, I don't think he's going to challenge Marvin Harrison Jr. for the team lead in targets, but I think he'll be very efficient on his opportunities.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And, just to kind of add, the Lions are one of the more man-heavy defenses in the league as well. So just like another note on Dortch, and it's a laughably small sample size, but I'll add it in there to help your argument. But Dortch is the only Arizona wide receiver to catch a ball against man coverage this year, has earned a 60% target rate against man coverage. It's only 5 routes, so that's where the joke of the sample size comes in. But hey, just trying to be a good friend and help out the argument for Dortch this week. Okay, so next name on the list for the third straight week, this man makes the list. He might just need his own featured segment going forward, called "What to Do with Rashid Shaheed." So where is he for you this week, Nick?
So when I wrote this up initially in the intro, I put that he can be tentatively treated as a wide receiver 1, and then I was doing edits, and I was like, maybe let's temper it and just say wide receiver 2 for now. But the Saints offense, we just talked about, it's the most efficient offense on a per play basis. Rashid Shaheed is fully entered 2 wide receiver sets. He is the locked in number 2 there. And importantly, he's running most of his routes on the perimeter, but the matchup that I chose to highlight here is the slot cornerback matchup. I did talk about his perimeter stuff as well, because he's averaging over 6 yards per out run on the perimeter, which is outrageous, number 1 in the NFL. But in the slot, he is, when they go into 3 receiver sets, Rashid Shaheed is the primary slot receiver. So he's kind of getting the best of both worlds here. They have yet to put in, as I mentioned, Cooper DeJean in the starting slot role in Philadelphia. He had a hamstring. He broke something in his last year of college here, and then he had a bad hamstring strain. So they're, Vic Fangio, he's kind of making him earn the job. Anyway, he gets to go beat up on Avonte Maddox. Among 51 NFL slot defensive backs with at least 150 slot coverage snaps from week 1, 2023 to week 2, 2024, Maddox ranks 3rd worst in yards allowed per coverage snap and dead last in explosive pass plays or allowed rate. What more do you need to know?
Yeah, that is a matchup for Shaheed to take advantage of. Absolutely. I should have never doubted him last week after having him as a start in week one. I mean, that Dallas defense was not as good as I thought they might be. And again, I think, we might have even said it for him. It only really takes one play to make his fantasy day. We saw that again. And I mean, he's going to have those opportunities against Avonte Maddox and company. He's just so explosive, so hard to cover downfield. And Derek Carr looking like the second coming of Dan Marino or something. I think we should trust him until he gives us reason not to, basically, right? I mean, I wish we'd get more Chris Olave as well, if I'm being honest, but I like both of these wide receivers coming into the season. Olave, I think it was the dark horse wide receiver one. Shaheed was the breakout candidate. And the one big question mark for it to all happen was Derek Carr. And so far it looks pretty damn good to hopefully keep those things coming to fruition. So we'll be firing up Shaheed once again this week. Okay, another wide receiver piggybacking off your QB streamer list this week, Nick. Who's up next for you?
DK Metcalf. And I know I wanted to talk about him. I considered another player who we'll get to, but I wanted to talk about him because I think that sometimes when people see these big, scary cornerback names, they can just go, no, I can't trust him. Yeah, DK Metcalf against Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey's getting older. He's still very talented, and he's dissuading quarterbacks from targeting him at a very high rate. But when they do, they are going after him downfield, currently averaging a 15.0 yard average depth of target against. That is the deepest of his career. If we add in that famous Brian Thomas, Cook show that we saw right off the bat, that ADOT jumps up to 24.3 yards. Now we can add and subtract a whole bunch of stuff. So I understand if anybody wants to, throw shade there, but point is teams are testing Jalen Ramsey deep. We now have DK Metcalf, 6 foot, whatever, 200, whatever, runs like a transformer. And this Seattle passing offense with Shane Waldron out is just thriving. So I am not shying away from this at all. I've got him, I believe, written him as a high-end wide receiver 2 in the piece rankings, though. I think I'm pushing him up to back-end wide receiver 1. We'll see how everything shakes out ultimately, but they're going to take their shots here. And if you're telling me DK Metcalf is going to be given ample opportunity downfield against a team in total disarray, I'll take those odds.
Nice. Yeah, no, I love it. Nothing to add there for DK Metcalf. Definitely feeling pretty good about him and confident. So I'm going to drop in some quick hitters for potential kind of bounce back games or wide receivers that I think are finally going to get on the right track here heading into week 3, and guys who have been somewhat quiet to start the season, right? So starting with DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Moore has only finished as PPR wide receiver 41 and PPR wide receiver 30 through the first 2 weeks. So pretty disappointing so far, but don't think it's due to much to his fault, right? Caleb Williams has kind of been shaky in his first 2 starts, a mix of good and bad in there, but Moore has only really been on the bad end of things for the most part. Again, he's yet to finish inside the top 30 PPR wide receivers through 2 weeks. The Bears offensive line does provide a little bit of encouraging advantage here in the trenches, where Williams should have some more success in getting his top target the ball. The Bears pass blocking unit ranks around average on the season, 64.2, but the Colts pass rush ranks among the bottom of the league with just a 55.1 pass rush grade, which is 28th. They'll also be without DeForest Buckner. Leatu Latu is dealing with a hip injury, so that just kind of softens the pass rush a little bit more for Indianapolis. Colts also rank already 28th in quick pressure rate with a 16.1% quick pressure rate. 2.5 seconds or less. So 16.1%, which again, just gives the rookie quarterback a little bit more time to make those throws. And then if you look at pressure dropbacks this season, DJ Moore has seen just 5 targets that has led to only 1 catch for 11 yards. So a 20% completion rate, just a lack of accuracy there under pressure for Caleb Williams. However, on non-pressured dropbacks, Williams has obviously been much better, providing catchable targets to Moore as he's earned 12 targets for an 83.3% completion rate, and leading to a team-leading 78 receiving yards there. So just hoping, the Bears O-line continues to hold up here against the Colts D-line, who, again, without DeForest Buckner, potentially without their first-round pick, Latu, I think it's time to get back on the right track here for the Bears passing offense this week. And another player who has been off to a quiet start, which I think ends this week, is Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers. Kind of an obvious start, I think, but I just wanted to highlight him. I'm looking at this Rams coverage unit, and they're beaten to hell at this point. Darius Williams still on IR. John Johnson just went to IR as well. Bottom 10 team coverage grade so far. The Rams have also been the NFL's most zone-heavy defense this season, but they rank in the bottom 10 in defensive success rate in that coverage, and bottom 5, so 5 worst, in yards allowed per reception, yards allowed per coverage snap, and yards allowed per coverage target while in zone defense. San Francisco going to be without Deebo Samuel this week. Brandon Ayuk, I mean, he's going to step up. He's going to produce better than he has so far this season. He was also a top 12 wide receiver versus zone coverage in 2023. So I'm thinking he's able to bounce back here in a very favorable matchup. And then last one that I'm feeling pretty good about a bounce back here, Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns going up against the New York Giants. So Amari Cooper is currently PPR wide receiver 81 on the year. It has been a brutal start of the season for Coop, but can't imagine it stays that way for much longer. He gets a favorable matchup here against the Giants to potentially bounce back. The Browns, they own the best wide receiver matchup of the week, according to our strength of schedule tool. The Giants, looking at what their coverages look like, they run a mix of man and zone coverages, although they are tied for the worst defensive success rate while allowing the third worst first down plus touchdown rate from man coverage. Amari Cooper has earned a pretty promising target rate while facing man coverage at 25%, a much stronger number than his target rate versus zone, which is only at 13%. I think that could be a promising sign for a nice bounce back opportunity against an exploitable man coverage unit in New York. Deshaun Watson, that a lot's going to depend on him. He was slightly better in week 2. He still has room for improvement, though, to turn his overall play around. But I don't mind the matchup against the Giants this week to make it happen. So what do you think, Nick? Crazy, or are you feeling the bounce back as well?
Yeah, no, I'm on board with everything you're saying. Let's well, I mean, I bet against the Giants last week, and that burned me a little bit. But yeah, I'm sipping the haterade on the Giants defense pretty hard. Moving on to I've got 2 to add here to John's list. So Xavier Worthy against the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are allowing the highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers through 2 weeks. I think that is a recipe for disaster when you have a guy like Xavier Worthy get the ball into his hands and he's gone. I recognize that the Falcons' potentially league best safety unit is going to be an issue here, but you can't give someone this, chances again and again and again in terms of the cornerback core's performance, and expect, 4-2 Jets guy to not just rip a long one to the house. So Xavier Worthy, other one I wanted to mention, Jackson Smith-Njigba. He was every week. I kind of leave a few guys on the cutting room floor with the wide receiver cornerback matchup piece. JSN was one of them. This week opted to go with DK Metcalf instead. I am a big fan of betting against Kader Kahu, and like we talked about last week and earlier so far in this show, Miami Dolphins, they're just in a bad place. Khalil Shakir last week was on the start list. He went 3 of 3 for 38. Not a high volume day, but that's kind of what that's only from the slot where he averaged 3.17 yards per run. On the day overall, he caught 5 of 5 for 54. It's at least helpful in the flex. JSN, much more robust role. He's taken on the wide receiver 2 role there. Inside-outside usage. I think he's going to have a great day against Miami Dolphins cornerback and my Twitter nemesis, Kader Kahu.
Yeah, your guy Cater not having a great season so far. So yeah, Nick's definitely winning that matchup right now. But yeah, I'm with you, JSN. There's just so much potential in there against Kohu. I mean, we talked about it last week, but yeah, he now ranks dead last in PFF coverage grade among 100 qualifying cornerbacks with a 30.6 coverage grade. That's Cater Kohu. So yeah, I'm with you. LFG JSN. All right, Nick, we've been pretty optimistic about our fantasy options to this point, so we've got to come down on a few other ones this week to balance things out. You've highlighted a few names here from your wide receiver cornerback matchup article that you're not feeling great about here in week 3. So who's the first name on the list for you?
Yeah, so you mentioned that Cater Kohu ranks dead last. Cincinnati Bengals perimeter cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt. His 89.6 PFF coverage grade on the defensive right side ranks number 1 overall among 32 NFL defensive right cornerbacks with at least 28 defensive right coverage snaps. He's just locked onto that side. He's taken 107 out of 108 snaps on that side. And he's facing Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin, who he was in the start list last week. Yeah. He earned a team high 8 targets. He caught 6 of them, and it went for just 22 yards. And it's because Cliff Kingsbury is a moron. And in one league, I just dropped Terry McLaurin because maybe they'll figure it out. But he's given Cliff Kingsbury's horizontal air raid. It's just going to be more of this. And there are going to be times when Terry McLaurin succeeds, but it's going to be just because he hulks it and does everything on his own. I think he's 27 years old. Maybe he's 28. He's kind of getting past that age apex. And this was it. I think if he was going to hit his ceiling, this was the situation, and it's not happening. So rather than giving myself the wide receiver 3 flex headache every week, I just dropped him. I'm not saying everyone should do that because he's talented. But it's just a brutal situation. And now he has to go play Cam Taylor-Britt, who is very good. He's not elite. He's very good, but he really just jaws at guys. You've seen DK Metcalf lose composure, get penalties for like shoving the guy after plays. I can only imagine how frustrating it is to play in Cliff Kingsbury's offense and then, have this guy in your ear too. Like, it just seems like an all around bad matchup for Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, the Bengals as a whole too, like they've been a really good coverage unit so far. I think 79.9 coverage grade for the year. That's a top 5 mark. They've been relatively stingy in terms of fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position as well. Not a great matchup in the trenches. Like Trey Hendrickson continues to be a game record there as a pass rusher. I don't know if Washington plans to do their rotating left tackle thing again between Cornelius Lucas and the rookie Brandon Coleman, but
why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
when you have the chance to do that.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, Hendrickson will eat that kid alive. Like he has just a 25.9 pass blocking grade on the year. It's just a weird choice by them. And yeah, it's just hard to know kind of what to expect from the Washington passing game with the mobile rookie quarterback under center, right? So far it just hasn't worked out well for McLaurin. Wide receiver 77 in week 1, wide receiver 42 in week 2. Like Luke McCaffrey outperformed him in week 1. Noah Brown did so in week 2. Like maybe it's Terry's turn, but I think this is just a situation where we kind of wait to see it before trusting it kind of thing. And like you said, the Cliff Kingsbury offense isn't helping matters here right now. So definitely with you there. And then speaking of number 1 wide receivers who have been outperformed by like different randos on their own team through 2 weeks, Drake London gets Ray McClouded in week 1, and while he had a much better week 2, Darnell Mooney was just slightly better. So Nick, you're thinking we don't need to leave London locked in lineups just yet in a very tough matchup.
Yeah, I wrote him up. I described him as being a shaky wide receiver 3 for this. So I'm not saying bench Drake London, but it's like his ADP was being drafted as a wide receiver 1 or maybe top 14, whatever. And he's not that right now. He's going up against Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Trent McDuffie. So McDuffie has not registered a shadow coverage worthy snap tally yet, but Steve Spagnuolo is moving him around the formation at least to some degree against opposing number 1. So Zay Flowers McDuffie lined up, moving, right to left, etc., on a plurality of snaps against Zay Flowers in week 1. And then he took the majority of snaps against Jamar Chase in week 2. The backups here in Kansas City are players who I've also tried to highlight. Back in August, I think I wrote up like, hey, let's not test Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams right off the bat. Kansas City has done a really good job of drafting depth pieces at cornerback, and I think that's why they were comfortable letting L'Jarius Sneed go. So far, Jalen Watson, he's kind of separated from Joshua Williams a little bit. He's a good number 2 perimeter guy. I'm not saying that he's an elite player, but he, as far as number 2s go, I think he grades out as like 27th. I've got it in the piece here. Like Kansas City is a good secondary. So Drake London, he's averaging, I think it was 1.19, career low 1.19 yards per out run thus far this year. Kirk Cousins, I know he wowed everyone in that game-winning drive, but he's got 4 underthrows so far this year. That's tied for second most among NFL cornerbacks. Even when he's getting the ball downfield, there's still issues. Players are having to come back to the ball. I think he sort of papered over his Achilles problems with that showing, and it's going to give people false hope. So maybe if you could sell high on Drake London, this is a balancing game, because I am skeptical. I think that Kirk Cousins bought himself a little bit more time, but I kind of still think we're going to see Michael Penix before the year is over. If you assess this as, I think Penix is going to be in there sooner than later or whatever, then maybe you hold. But like, if you could make a lateral, at least, by August ADP, a lateral wide receiver 1 move for Drake London, I would probably do it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's a good way to look at it. I mean, you look at this matchup too, like the Falcons have struggled in pass blocking as well. Like specifically Chris Lindstrom, for some reason, owns the 64th ranked pass blocking grade out of 65 qualifiers for the position. So he's going to see a lot of Chris Jones, who now with Aaron Donald retired, probably the best pass rushing interior defensive lineman in the league. Cousins has struggled under pressure as well as most quarterbacks do, but he's thrown 3 turnover-worthy plays, 2 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, and just the 1 touchdown as well. But Spags, I think, is going to be able to bring pressure against them again. So I could see a world where London isn't necessarily able to put up that strong stat line and probably more in that wide receiver 3 range, like you said. And then you got one more name here on the list, somebody that was on the waiver wire targets episode from earlier in the week. What do you think about Quentin Johnston this week?
So round of applause for Quentin, because he looks like he is rebounding from the worst rookie season that I've ever seen. But week 3, it looks to me like it's going to be a shadow coverage matchup against Joey Porter Jr. Porter shadowed Drake London in week 1, allowed a 57.0 PFF receiving grade. He shadowed Cortland Sutton in week 2, allowed a 55.4 PFF receiving grade. Josh Palmer, I think he's going to play. I haven't checked his status today, but he is dealing with his second knee injury in the last 12 months. Palmer is a fine contributor, but they want Quentin Johnston to be the alpha on the perimeter. And so far he's doing a great job. I think he's up to 2.17 yards per out run. Yes. Which is a huge upgrade. He was sub 0.9 last year. So I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but I think maybe after the way to look at this with Quentin Johnston is that after week 3, this could be a potential buy low. I don't think you should start him this week. It's just a matchup to avoid. If you're in a terrible situation, the usage may be there to warrant it. But for me, this is probably, if you added him on waivers, for me, this is probably a stash. And hey, if he goes and he succeeds against Porter, then you're starting him from here on out, and we're all happy to see this guy succeed. Their number 2 cornerback, Dante Jackson, who they got from, I think it was Carolina last year, is also having a pretty good season. So even if Johnston gets some time against Porter, our PFF wide receiver cornerback matchup chart gives Johnston a poor 23.8 receiving matchup advantage rating against Dante Jackson. So it's just not a great day for Johnston.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, really promising to see the performance last week and so far this season. That was really nice to see, and was a waiver wire target this week, but not necessarily one where we're starting in most formats, right? Just someone that I think we're fine to hold for now, and at least want to see some more consistency there before trusting him in most lineups. So I think that makes total sense. All right, before we go on to the rest, I do want to give a shout out to LinkedIn Jobs ads, LinkedIn Jobs as an ad here. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even though those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/PFF fantasy. That's linkedin.com/PFF fantasy to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's highlight a few running backs now. And I mentioned how I'm all about the players kind of bouncing back and delivering more on their ADP this week. And Josh Jacobs is one of those players where, he's been fine, RB26 and RB21 in PPR through each of the first 2 weeks, but not quite that top 15 running back yet that he was being drafted as. And I think this is the week that we get that with the Packers going up against the Tennessee Titans. And this is the one that I'm specifically looking at the matchup in the trenches again, where the Packers offensive line has generated the third most rushing yards before contact per attempt at 2.0 yards. The Tennessee Titans defensive line, meanwhile, ranks among the bottom 10 in the league in run defense grade with a 48.3, while the team as a whole ranks 31st in run defense grade with a 39.8. So for Jacobs in particular, like, he's been excellent when given room to run, where if he's gotten at least 1 yard before contact on his rush attempts this season, he's averaging 9.3 yards per carry, which is the third highest mark among running backs with at least 10 carries in those situations. Jacobs also owns a 90.5 rushing grade in those situations, which is also a top 5 mark among the same qualifying running backs. So despite, yet having to crack that top 20 PPR running backs in weekly finish, I think he's in a prime position to do so and then some in this matchup against the Titans.
Yeah, he's also averaging, by my back of napkin matchup, I think 75 rushing yards per vomit on the ball. So whatever his PFF rushing grade.
Oh my God, that was insane. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to chime in here and say that everything's okay. Jeffrey Simmons, they're resting him now, I guess, on Wednesdays. But when he popped up on the injury report, I kind of went, oh man, that could be a big deal. But I think Jeffrey Simmons is fine, and I like this. Josh Jacobs, let's rock.
Nice. And then one of our other running back starts this week comes from Nate's start sit article, which you can check out now at pff.com. It's Zach Moss of the Cincinnati Bengals going against the Washington Commanders. And this one really boils down to opportunity for Zach Moss, who really dominated the touches last week. He played the large majority of the backfield snaps, which included early downs, goal line work, even third downs. And then as Nate points out in the article, this is more in line with kind of what we saw from Joe Mixon last season with the team, with the exception of just getting more third down work for Moss, which has been nice to see. So now, we know how well that role worked out for Joe Mixon last season and really for his career as a whole. It's led to him basically finishing as a top 12 running back or close to it, just despite not being one of the more efficient backs in the league. And I think if Moss kind of continues in that role on this offense, there's some really nice potential here for him to do something similar. And then with the passing down work also kind of helps his chances as well. So I know he was relatively quiet in week 2 against the Chiefs, but really nice matchup this week against the Commanders, where the Bengals might not have to pass as much and can lean on Zach Moss a little bit more. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him deliver a top 24, potentially higher finish this week against the Commanders.
Yeah. So I wrote up Washington's pass and run defenses as units to exploit this week. So or defenses to exploit in week 3. You guys can go read about it in depth there. I'm really irritated by the backfield usage. this is just Chase Brown's just, I think he's just a better player. But Zach, Taylor has to agree with me for that to matter. So there's that. But I'm being a company man here. As I wrote in the piece, explosive backup running back Chase Brown grades out as a superior rusher and receiver to Moss. 71.5 PFF rushing grade, 55.0 PFF receiving grade. For Brown, Moss, 66.7 PFF rushing grade and a 34.0 PFF receiving grade. To your credit there, to your point though, they had Joe Mixon in this bell cow role, just doing his thing for a really long time. What they maybe just want is a consistent guy, and Zach Moss does that. I harped a lot this offseason on the fact that he, his breakout year last year is like a year 4 or 5 player. He still didn't clear 1,000 yards, but maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe they just want a guy that they can trust and someone who maybe experiences play-to-play inconsistency in Brown, even though he can, literally run laps around Moss. Maybe that doesn't matter. What I kind of feel like though is maybe this will be a big time sell high moment for Moss entering week 4. But then again, if he goes out there and crushes it, he's probably not giving up the role. So I can't blame you if you want to hold on to him. That might be the point when I cut Chase Brown. I'm still holding him for now. And I think that, DFS or like super contrarian flex option, he could have an explosive performance here on admittedly limited touches, but it's a great matchup. They should be able to do whatever they want.
Yeah, and that's the thing with like Moss or Mixon or whoever it is, like it's just the role more than anything. Like I know, like again, like Mixon wasn't overly efficient, right? But like if he's going to get that work, and if they're going to stubbornly put him out there for all those touches, and he's going to get goal line work in a really good offense too, like that's kind of where the value comes from for the most part. So yeah, I'm with you. I like Chase Brown as well. I think he obviously has been the better back, and would like to see him in that role. But for now, I think we roll with Zach Moss until they come to their senses, I guess. So then one of the other running backs that I wanted to pull out of Nate's start sit article is Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. We talked about him as a start last week because that week 1 usage looked just so promising. But with Kevin Stefanski, and company, basically what they did was they pulled the rug out from under us. They split that usage up a lot more, and actually more in favor of Deontay Foreman. So as Nate pointed out, like Ford was kind of the clear feature back for the Browns in week 1. He played 57 of a possible 76 offensive snaps, which marked a career high in both total snaps and percentage of offensive snaps. And that's kind of what tricked us, right? Week 2, we saw more of a 3-man committee. Deontay Foreman led the way there. He actually took all the goal line work and early down touches, or most of those as well. Pierre Strong even worked in there, but he got hurt later in the game. So I'm not sure if he's going to be back in time for this week. So could be a potential 2-man backfield. It's not like the worst matchup for running backs by any means, but just based on the usage from last week, I'd have a really hard time trusting Ford as well. I don't want to trust either of them really until we see something more reliable as far as consistent usage. But at this point, like if I had to start one, it'd probably end up being Foreman again, just based on what the team showed us most recently. Ideally though, you'll have better options than both. So
I have felt like a crazy person because of everything that has gone on with this backfield. The way I looked at this summer, I'll be quick on my soapbox here. The way I looked at this summer was that Foreman was the obvious player to draft because he was available significantly later. And comparing these guys on a per play basis, I didn't understand why Jerome Ford was just the consensus guy to draft. Looking at their 2023 data, Foreman, 3.9 yards per carry. Ford, 3.9 yards per carry. Foreman, 0.19 missed tackles forced per rush. Ford, 0.2 missed tackles forced per rush. They have a tenth of a yard difference in yards after contact. Foreman was 0.2% more explosive. He had a superior red zone conversion rate. He had a deeper ADOT. They were either trading decimal points in every single metric, or what stands out to me most is that Foreman beat Ford by almost a yard in average depth of target. And for listeners, like a running back with a positive ADOT is a really big deal. Typically, these guys are like at 0.0 or even negative because most of their work is coming on screens or like, safety valve stuff out of the backfield. So anyway, point is, I think these two players are very similar talent wise. One of them was available significantly cheaper and is built like a brick house. I mean, he like this guy, or I like Michael Foreman's car. He's built like a Camry. Like he can just Foreman has a very fun track record of being a guy who coaches just go, let's give that guy like 15 carries and see what he can do. Ford, nice change of place player, not trying to throw shade at him. But if I'm running this team, I'm like, yeah, Foreman, start him, let him get the hard yards, especially in scoring position, and then we'll get Ford involved in there. And maybe when Nick Chubb, if he comes back, let's not forget, like, he had 3 ligaments sewn back together. You have to get him the tension just right. Like, this is not an easy thing to come back from. When he comes back, the obvious thing to do is to replace anyway. Let's wait and see on it. I agree with this as a cautionary move in sitting Foreman, but it does make sense to me that Foreman is the guy.
Yep, that makes perfect sense to me as well. Okay, one little segment we wanted to add this week, and might do so going forward, was discuss some of like the top waiver claim players from this past week and kind of what to do with them now that they're on our roster. So Nick, this was your idea, so I'll let you kind of explain the idea behind it a bit more, and and then we can get into the 2 of the top names from this week's waiver wire.
Yeah, so I likened this. I was talking to John, and I likened this to, there's one time when my girlfriend was walking our dog, and he was watching all these birds flying around, and he stuck his head into this big hedge, and he pulled it out, and he's got wings sticking out either side of his mouth, and she sort of screamed and like bopped him on the head, and he had just been staring at her like, what do I do with this thing? And she bopped him, and then he let go, and the bird just flew off. And it's sometimes when we get these waiver targets, like Carson Steele, the guy was a fullback a month ago, and now he's Kansas City's ostensible starting. Like, what do we do with this guy now that we've got him? So we figure we can kind of, do this like George with the bird here, and like, what do you do with it once you catch it? Carson Steele, they bring in Kareem Hunt, who Nathan pointed out on Twitter. I think if they wanted Kareem Hunt to be the passing down specialist, they would have signed him instead of Samaje Perine. They've kind of already told us what they think of Kareem Hunt. Now, opinions can change. They can get these guys into their roles and then go, no, we actually trust Kareem Hunt. So I'm not saying anything is set in stone. But right now, to me, what this looks like is Carson Steele is going to be, he's going to get 12 rushing attempts. Maybe he catches a target. As a fullback, he should be able to go out there and do some stuff in the passing game. I think Samaje Perine he'll just be the passing down guy, and then Kareem Hunt, if he cycles in, that's going to be a pain for both guys. I don't think that's going to happen. Like I just said, they've kind of shown us what they think already. But John and I kind of want to just run through a few names here and do basically a flex play name game. Now that you've got the waiver wire target, who are you starting? So I think a good place to start, guy who kind of has disappointed, but now with quarterback change, maybe has a higher upside. John, who are you going to go with? Carson Steele or Chuba Hubbard?
I would go Carson Steele in that case.
Okay. I'm kind of frankly leaning Chuba Hubbard. Just now, maybe the Dave Canales 10 targets to the running back thing will happen with a competent quarterback in there. But this is good. I think we're kind of getting to the heart of this thing. Austin Eckler or Carson Steele?
Against Cincinnati, give me. Oh God, I kind of like Carson Steele. That's my problem. Like I I think he could actually be good. So I probably lean Steele. Like I think he's gonna get some goal line opportunities. Like
me too,
right? And it's Kansas City. They're gonna get those attempts. So yeah, I mean, it's I guess like PPR. Then Austin Eckler probably has more value there. But anything else, I think I'd probably go Carson Steele.
Yep, me too. How about the Cowboys running backs? Cowboys are facing Baltimore Ravens this week.
No, not the Dallas running backs. I can't.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Carson Steele. One guy who we kind of passed over, but this is the perfect way to bring them back up. Last week, you correct me. Maybe you're more in tune with this. How did the Pittsburgh backfield shake out last week? It looked to me like Jaylen Warren maybe kind of quietly pulled ahead.
He did, yeah. So Warren, it seems like as he's kind of gotten healthier, has kind of gotten a little bit more snaps. So Najee Harris has kind of faded a little bit, at least just based on week 2, right? So who knows with Pittsburgh, like they could change that with Arthur Smith at any point. But yeah, it did seem like Jaylen Warren definitely worked in a lot more last week.
Okay, so Carson Steele or Najee Harris?
Who's Pittsburgh playing again?
Los Angeles Chargers.
Chargers, yeah. Give me, it's not bad. Yeah, I'd still go Steele.
It's super close, right? But that's where we're at with this guy. Close. So I think more often than not, I think that we're going to be able to just put Steele in there, 0 RB, RB2, or as a flex option. But I think we're both on board with Carson Steele this week.
Yeah. I just want to take a swing on the upside, right? Basically, that's kind of what it is for me. Like, I think we don't really know exactly what it's going to be. He can be a complete bust, right? Like, they also brought up Keontae Ingram to the active roster and stuff like that. So maybe he works in, but like, I just think the upside in this offense for a lead running back, like you said, 12 carries, potentially the goal line work as well. That's kind of what is the most appealing thing for me for Carson Steele. Also, he has a pet alligator, which is cool.
I didn't know that. All right, moving on to the next one. This morning, Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson, talking to reporters, tells them, I forget the exact quote here, but it's something like, no, I don't have it here in front of me, but it was something like, probably still going to need a little more time on tight end Evan Ingram's hamstring strain, which occurred in game day warmups last week. So Brenton Strange goes out there, catches 3 passes for, I think it was 64 yards. Trevor Lawrence, he sort of moves like a giraffe. And when he's in trouble, he looks to the middle of the field. It's like how Kyler Murray can't see the middle of the field. So he just goes to the sideline. And Christian Kirk, is he good? Was he a product of volume this whole time? It's crazy what is going on. He did have a touchdown called back, but he finished last week with 1 yard, which is hard to do if you're truly a difference-making player. So waiver wire potential pickup here and streaming option if you're in trouble is Brenton Strange. Strange was a second-round pick a year ago, got totally dusted by Evan Ingram, but he was a second-round pick for a reason. He is a decent prospect. The way that I tend to approach tight end is you either have a great player or you have an absolute headache. And so it's kind of helpful, or I think maybe relatively easy with the tight end position. Like, and this is sort of Nathan Yonke's thesis with Taysom Hill. It's like, well, do you want to, like, so Pat Freiermuth, 6 combined hamstring, MCL, and concussions. Like it, and he's stuck playing for Arthur Smith. Now Michael Pruitt's out, so maybe that improves things there. But let's start Brenton Strange against Pat Freiermuth. And I should mention they're facing the Buffalo Bills, who are down Matt Milano, starting linebacker, on injured reserve. They lost their number 2 starting linebacker last week. Teron Johnson, slot cornerback, is out, and they let both of their starting safeties walk in free agency. So the middle of the Buffalo Bills defense has just been torn apart. Yeah, I'm looking at Brenton Strange as a back end tight end 1 this week, which is crazy, I know. But what do you think, John? Brenton Strange or Pat Freiermuth facing the LA Chargers?
I am actually with you. I have Strange over Freiermuth as well. Like, I have very similar notes. Like, I'm looking at the Bills defense right now. And again, no Bernard, no Milano, Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin are the starting safeties. No Teron Johnson. You look at Brenton Strange last week, stepped right into a decent receiving role, like you said, right around 68% route participation. So not bad there. Like, could potentially, see that get a bit higher, assuming Ingram is out again this week in a game where they'll need to pass against Buffalo. So, Jacksonville, among Jacksonville players who ran more than 5 routes in week 2, he led the team with a 26.9% target rate. So like, there's a potential there. There's usage there that, says like that Jacksonville likes him. And, he stepped into kind of the Evan Ingram role. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think as strange as that sounds, Brenton Strange is a guy this week.
Awesome. Dallas Goedert or Strange?
Oh God, Goddard kind of killed me last week. Once I saw Grant Calcaterra getting passes early on, that was so annoying. But so Philadelphia, remind me again, they are
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Saints.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, man, oh God, you know what? Give me the shot on Strange here. I just trust it a little bit more. Philly's they've got better options. The New Orleans defense has been excellent so far. So yeah, let's take a shot on a Brenton Strange.
I think basically just if you're bold enough to do it, which I understand if you're like, no, I'll take 4 passes for 30 yards. I think that he's just in there as a tight end streamer, tight end one, for anyone who doesn't have a sure thing. Should we move on to streaming defenses here?
Yeah. Let's close her out here with a couple of our streaming defenses for the week. You had included these in the quarterback streaming article as well. So who was the first one for you that you liked this week?
Yeah, Seattle Seahawks defense, special teams. So as mentioned earlier, Tua Tagovailoa is on injured reserve. Left tackle Teron Armstead, he's hurt again. I don't know if he's practicing today, but it's, he is old and this is becoming a problem here. Also, Seattle's defense under Mike Macdonald doing great. Currently boasts the league's 5th best pass rush win rate, second best quarterback pressure rate, and grades out as a top 10 unit. They're doing this without Ikenna Nwosu. It's very impressive. Loving what I'm seeing out of Seattle. So I think that they are a high-end streaming option. Do you have anything you want to add for this one?
Yeah, just that. I mean, Seattle, they look so good. They're the highest graded defense on the year. That comes with the highest graded coverage grade on the year as well. Facing Skylar Thompson this week only adds to kind of their defensive upside. Plus, you got Boye Mafe, who has a top 12 pass rush grade on the year. It's going to see a lot of Austin Jackson, who's Miami's right tackle. Austin Jackson has a 38.7 pass block grade on the year, which is 65th among 68 qualifiers. Love the Seattle defense. Oh, and their special teams unit is the highest graded in the league as well. So if they could come through with a big play there, then even better, right? So yeah, love the Seattle call.
Cool. So this next one, I feel slightly less confident in it because so Las Vegas Raiders versus Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton, he's not going to go out there and I don't think he's going to go do Joe Flacco stuff. I mean, he might in terms of just Deontay Johnson, he might do Amari Cooper things. He's not going to turn this offense around and make it a fireworks show, but he can be competent. Anyway, Las Vegas pass rush. We know that the defensive line is very talented. Max Crosby did pick up an ankle injury, but he plays through basically everything. So I'm not worried about that. As far as the the cornerback unit, these guys, they're like a bunch of fly swatters. So pulling this from the piece, Las Vegas perimeter cornerbacks, Jacorian Bennett, 33.3%, and Jack Jones, 25.0%, tie for 8th or better in forced incompletion rate among 68 NFL quarterbacks with at least 25 perimeter coverage snaps. Las Vegas slot cornerback Nate Hobbs, 33.3% forced incompletion rate, ranks. I left that out of the notes, but anyway, he is also very high. These guys, they're just getting their hands on the ball. We need to pick up some more interceptions here, but they're doing a good job under Antonio Pierce as being a disruptive unit. And it is going to just be kind of a one-man show. I'm back in on Deontay Johnson this week. He was one of the guys who kind of got left on the cutting room floor there. But I think that Vegas, they don't have the same ceiling as Seattle, but I think that they can put up some points for you this week against Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I have to imagine Andy Dalton is significantly better than what Bryce Young has shown us this season, but I still can't imagine that this is necessarily a high scoring game for either side. So I think this makes perfect sense here to try to take advantage of. So that's going to do it for us today. So thank you all again for tuning in. As always, if you enjoy that, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already to the YouTube channel, or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us a ton as well. So Nick, huge thank you to you as well for doing this again with me. But before you go, please remind everybody what you have going on at pff.com this week.
Yep. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you can find in that order, quarterback, defense, quarterback and defense streamers of the week. We've switched up the publishing order. So now on Tuesdays, you can get the defenses to exploit, Wednesdays, you can get defenses to exploit. And then Thursday mornings, wide receiver cornerback matchups to target and avoid. You go find me at Roto World for my injury stuff, but through those three pieces there are on pff.com.
Nice. Love it. As for me, again, the wide receiver man zone coverage report is out now. That's out every Thursday morning, as well as offensive line, defensive line matchups to target and avoid will be out on Friday morning. IDP rankings, IDP fantasy report also out now for my fellow lovers of defensive player football. And of course, make sure to check out Nate's rankings, start, sit, and recap articles as well. Good luck to everybody in week 3. And until next time, peace out.